Q&A that came from the meeting. But I wanted you to have the paper form of it in case we're talking about some of this stuff. So on the top is from DPI, their school construction application that we have to fill out, and here's the approval process. And then I pulled the century code for you that's here on the bottom so that we may, you know, just to have something to refer back to. I've got the school construction code. I did not pull the bidding code. It pulls in bidding from just about every entity. So I did pull off this legal spotlight so you can see that. This comes from North Dakota School Boards, and they just actually sent that out not too long ago. Then I pulled the public improvement bids and contracts for you, the architect, engineer, and land surveying. And then I found some things online just to kind of walk through the process of school construction and renovation. And this is from the architects membership, general agency school construction guys, so you can look at it, and it just kind of walks through things so that everybody can kind of understand those pieces. Also, Judy was wondering if I could share the survey results with everybody. So this is after the referendum, and these are the post survey results, just give you some information about what people gave us for feedback. So tonight, we're going to focus on legislation, and we're going to focus on law, because that tends to be just a biggie for us. And I've invited Travis Jordan. He was the superintendent from Beulah. And in full transparency, these guys work for a company called Icon. We're not under contract with them or anything like that, but Travis was willing to come down, and Kyle was with him, and they've got experience in school builds. So if you have questions, you absolutely can throw them at them and they will answer those. They are working with Valley City. I don't know if you saw Valley City last night. Their board went to a vote, and they're going to a referendum to build a new school in Valley City. I believe their vote is in June. So these guys were kind enough to say that they would come down and help and answer questions that you had. But I thought maybe we would just go around and introduce ourselves again. I know we did it last week, but then that gives them a chance to understand what everybody's background is, and maybe, you know, tell them like if you were an alumni or what you do for a job, so that they can kind of understand like why we asked, you know, different people to be on this committee. So Chris, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'm Chris Schmidt, born and raised here, K through 12, local businessman.
Scott German, graduated from Polk in 1992, been farmer here all my life.
Leroy Meal, graduated from Oaks in 85. I'm a farmer now, and I have 2 sons moving home.
Judy Hoffman, I'm an 87 graduate, and I work for Hoffman Irrigation at the office.
Mark Roney, graduated in 2013, licensed journeyman electrician, done quite a bit of work on the school as it is.
I'm Larry McCluskey journeyman. But I'm the technology director.
Jordan Lynch, high school principal, raising kids in school.
Shannon Jepson, I'm the business manager, not from here. I'm not going to tell you when I graduated. And I have 3 Oaks High School alumni.
Yes. Yeah, that's the question.
Yeah.
Like you said, I'm Travis Jordan. I was superintendent in Beulah the last 8 years, was in education for 20 years. Kyle at Icon pulled me out of education into the world of architecture. Can't draw a stick figure. But I work for Icon as an educational advocate. I help school districts through this process because I've been on both sides. Icon did some work for us, a lot of work for us in the past, and I knew nothing about this process at one time. And now I'm fairly seasoned in it, I guess, and so I'm just here to be an advocate and help.
Yeah, it's awesome. He's got both sides of the experience as far as going through the process. So my name is Kyle Kalami. So Icon Architectural Group is our company. I'm one of the ownership team there. My role, I'm not an architect as well. My wife is an architect. So I speak human and architect, which I feel like is very valuable. And my role, you know, we're working in probably maybe 15 districts right now, 15 different schools in various stages. And there's always a need or consensus or a question or dollars, and never really a direct path to get there. And so that's been my role at Icon for the last 10 years. And ultimately, the relationship that I built with Travis is, which led us to, you know, maybe 2 or 3 years of me taking him to coffee before he, you know, agreed to come over, and just to make that process easier for communities and understand what it is that we do and how we do it. I have a bunch of random slides if for every question that you guys might throw at me today. And I'm hoping that I can just answer your questions, but my job is strictly, you know, once consensus is built and funding secured, a project is decided, I kind of fade away. And that's when the architects do the real work and take the process forward. And so hopefully as we go through this process, you'll get a feel for ways to do things, and we're under no obligation. But to be honest, even if we were under contract, we probably would still be no obligation, and we'll talk a little bit more about, we do business a little bit differently, and I think that's one of the reasons we do so much K-12.
John Bakke, I've been in town here for 16 years. One daughter graduated last year, and I have 2 more kids in the process of graduating eventually.
David Irwin, maintenance and grounds. Transportation director. I had 2 boys that graduated here. 14 and 10.
Greg Dobitz, elementary principal. My 20th year.
Kelly Gephardt, elementary teacher, 24th year, I think. I must have started when I was 18. I have 2 sons have graduated, and I have a sophomore.
Graduated E3, and children that graduated also from HS. Business.
Patty Carlson from Texas, just moved here a couple years ago. Worked for Moss Tech Construction. I have a junior, and I also have a 9-month-old and a 2-year-old that will be here.
Kyle Garner, local business owner, graduated from here and have 3 kids currently in school.
Ryan Sire, class of 91, school board member.
Canova maintenance, and I've been in Oaks for about 4 years.
Drew Courtney, farmer, moved here in the fall of 2011. 2 kids in elementary and 2 more to come.
Great. Okay, I don't want to burn up time by talking. I want to let these guys answer questions that you had after the, you know, the information that I sent to you ahead of time and you were able to look over, and through the referendum process that we went through. And now's the time to shoot questions at them. Can I back up just a minute? The legislation, I wanted to give you guys an update on it, that we were just talking about that. You know, we were thinking, okay, there might be some money from the legislature for building this year for schools. That is all but fizzled out. I think we had about 4 bills that it started out. We ended up with 2 more. The one that was to require schools to get an assessment of their building. And there was a fiscal note attached to it. That's pretty much dead after yesterday. I got an email from the representative Anna Novak from Hazen, and she said, unfortunately, that got defeated, or was going to be defeated coming out of the committee. The other one that would be to build like the Hilton model. There was funding on that, but that's pretty much fizzled out too. We're getting towards the end. We're more than halfway through, and so those dollars are starting to be spoken for. And at one point, I heard them say that they were upwards or upside down about $1 billion, and that wasn't too long ago. That's how much money they put out. So now they're getting down where they're gonna have to start trimming it. So the money that we are thinking might be coming out, there's nothing coming out. And one of the biggest things that I'm hearing in the committees is the legislators saying the local communities need to take care of their schools. Why are they not taking care of the school? Why are they not fixing up their buildings? So that's where we're at legislatively. I sent you the links to the bills that were still alive as of last week. So hopefully you had a chance to check on those. You can go back in and you can look at them and see where they're at from there. So now I'll push forward then again to the questions about procedure, process, how you go about the bill. And I sent you that flow chart, you know, so that, you know, it would be easy to follow along there. So this flow chart that I sent, I was trying to figure out how do I explain what our process is. So that's so go ahead.
Can I just ask one question since you're on the legislative topic?
Yeah.
Governor our son's bill at 1176, kind of that, with that 3% cap, you know, that's got a fair amount of momentum going. How is that gonna affect this process going forward, if you're still on that topic?
Well, I don't know, and Travis might be able to answer some of this, that 3% cap, you know, schools are already capped. You know, we're like the only entity that is capped, but I don't know if that will cap the, if you're going out to, do a referendum. If that piece will be or not, so it's all, there's like about 4 tax relief bills or their property tax relief bills that are still floating around, and then they're gonna come together and mesh if that ends up going through. But we do know that the governor is strong and hard on property tax relief, so just don't know what form it's gonna come in.
My biggest thing is that 3%.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where the momentum's at, it sounds like, so down to see what's up there.
As far as I know, the 3% does not affect school districts going for the referendum, same thing. Counties and cities would have a 3% cap. However, I think that doesn't affect like local assessments, as far as I'm aware of. On that.
So questions on the process, Scott? You look like you have questions.
I mean, I think it's just all of us here that haven't worked on the original school board or the planning committees, like, some of these things in my mind seem like they're fast backwards. Like, why can't we get an architect and engineer to come and say, hey, this is what we propose you should do, versus like going out and getting the referendum, then having your engineers and contractors come in. And you just, like, I know Anna's got a little flow chart here, but explain maybe in more depth on why we can't go out and, I mean, there's contractors, whether it's an HVAC or window or plumbers or whatever, that give, you know, free estimates all the time and come and, you know, do a home remodel or business remodel. And why can or can't we, why can't the school say, hey, we want an HVAC company to come in and here's the Cadillac version, here's the Chevy version, here's the Ford Ranger version, you know, I guess walk me through or the group through, if you would, please.
I am gonna share my screen right away if that's all right. It's got a visual aid if that's all right. Perfect, okay. And make that a little bigger, maybe, okay. So the school districts can 100% go get, you know, any kind of contractor to come in, or the mechanical contractor, anyone to come in and give quotes. You run into century code limitations, specifically that when the aggregate project gets to 50,000, you have to bid the project publicly. And that's just, I mean, really, that's for your protection, right? You don't want, you know, somebody's cousin to come in here and get all the work and not have to have a competitive price.
Did you know Anna's cousin was an HVAC?
I don't. Is there any city council members here? County commission? Okay, all right.
Construction projects are exempted from that, it's 200,000.
So then it's, yep, and then it's 200,000, then where you need an architect to have stamped drawings, right? And that is primarily for life safety, right? It's somebody's got to be responsible for what's going on. So the average, let's use your uncle maybe, he probably doesn't carry insurance that if the building collapsed, he could be held responsible. And so he could be up there, and I'm sorry, I'm just gonna keep going with that example, and fixing mechanical system and damage some sort of structure or cause some sort of other harm. And at the end of the day, someone has to be responsible because that's the world we live in. And so as architects, generally the way it works when we're hired, all the other engineers for the most part are under us. And so you have one contract, and then we hire mechanical, structural, electrical. And at the end of the day, if anything fails, you go to the drawings and say, well, this person stamped it. And depending on which profession it is, and we're liable forever. There's no statute of limitations if a building falls down, or something like that. So the 200,000 is not our choice. You guys can do whatever it is that you'd like to do. But at the end of the day, if something were to happen and the school board or school district made a decision, they would be liable if there isn't anyone else that conducted the work. What I would say too is that you could hire, let's say you wanted to just hire an architect or engineer or anyone and say, just tell us what we need. Absolutely. The only issue is it will just cost money. And this is actually kind of how we've come about what we do. So let's say you wanted to hire an engineer, you wanted to get your mechanical system sorted. They were going to charge you 20 grand to redesign everything, give you all the information you need, tell you the equipment exactly, bidding documents, but then you have no way to pay for it. And this is, I would say very common, is that you have a need, you can identify the need, but to come out with how you're going to pay for it is the challenge.
You roll that into the referendum.
Yeah, you roll into the referendum, but you still have to get a referendum passed. So what we have found is that we've had great success coming into districts, just like you're sitting here and saying, we want to come into the district at risk so that we can go to public meetings and say, you haven't paid us $1. Valley City, we've been working with them for a year, they haven't paid us a penny. We worked with Travis's district for a couple of years, and they never paid us a penny. It wasn't until the community said, move forward, that we actually did the real design. And that's where it's like, you get the engineer or the contractor to come look and give you an estimate. That's kind of what we do prior to going to a referendum, to avoid exactly what you're saying, the $50,000 or the $20,000 bill to make some sort of design, because you don't really have the authority to do that if the public can't support the $2 million repair. So unfortunately, let's say that your uncle's coming to do that, and you get to the point where it's over $200,000. You at some point as a district or community would have to say pause, like we might be going across the lines, and we're not going to say to stop. You don't have a building inspector for the town. They're not going to stop you, right? But ultimately, it's just liability. And if you guys want to do, we actually walked away from a job maybe 10 years ago because ultimately we felt very strongly about installing a sprinkler system. I will go ahead and tell you, we are anti-kids on fire. Like, we're officially, that's our position. And so their board and their community just couldn't accept that. And so we walked away, and ultimately they ended up putting in sprinklers with a different architect. So for us, it's like, how do we toe the line of what's morally correct and what follows century code, and a way for us to successfully do business? And what we found is that if we go through this rather long process of identifying needs and building consensus and educating facts only with the community pays us, not the school board, not the administration. I will like to, at public meetings, say that I don't care what the superintendent thinks. I just care what everyone in the audience thinks, because superintendent can't pay me. And it's my dollars. We're here. This is our investment in Oaks already, to just say we want to educate you guys, and understanding there's not only is there no commitment to paying us, even if we had a contract, there still would be no commitment to paying us, because we do it enough to where it works out. We've had one project so far in the decade that I've been doing this that hasn't panned out. But for the most part, when you're honest and transparent and you go after just the needs and not the wants, projects happen. And so you look at Dickinson, they had 3 votes back to back to back that failed. They hired us. Grand Forks, they hadn't passed a vote in 38 years. They hired us. We passed a vote. Like, we don't do that because we build Taj Mahals. We don't do that because we try to skirt the system. But we are methodical, and unfortunately, it does take time. But at the same point, when you go through this process, generally, we can sit around the table and we can all agree that I don't like taxes. I don't want to pay more. I don't want to do this. It's not needed. But if we spend the time to go through the needs and how you would address it, and then what's the alternatives? Most of the time, Valley City was 5 3-hour meetings, 5 2 to 3 hour meetings. At the end of the day, there was a person that was practically yelling at me at meeting 1 that was saying, this is the right thing. And that's how we do our job. And so unfortunately, you can just hire somebody, but I would say chances are you're going to come up against obstacles. And you might also come up against situations where, are you necessarily doing the right thing when you zoom out? I don't know if I answered that question. But maybe leads to another one. We can keep going. But this process, if you see here, so this square, this is before a referendum. Understand the process. So when we say articulate the process, that's what we're doing right now, is trying to just get you guys all the information, make sure that we understand the district goals, assess. You already have an assessment. We have a purpose, a point in there of saying validate. Grand Forks had an assessment done by a different engineer, and we poked a lot of holes in it. I'm gonna say you probably have great data, but I don't trust it. I don't trust any data. Let me look at it. We gotta look at it ourselves. Even though you're not gonna pay us to look at it, if we can't stand up there and say, yep, we believe in what we saw, then there's no point to us standing up there at all. And then we share what we find. In some cases, it's spot on. In some cases, we find inconsistencies, but no matter what, we share. And then we understand, you know, there's gonna be a group where we want to get your feedback and get buy-in. And that's exactly it. If we want to build a $40 million school, I'd say we have 0% buy-in, right? But if we want to just replace the TV in here, we might have 100% buy-in. Well, there's somewhere in between of where you have needs, and that's where we try to find. And then ultimately taking that solution back, recommending it to the board, and then if necessary, calling for a vote. And, you know, that's what took place last night in Valley City. You know, it was the culmination of 5 really long board meetings or committee meetings, going through things, weighing the options, asking the hard questions, and understanding that if we can answer every question on day one, then you guys aren't asking hard enough questions. And so we need to come back to get to the point where, okay, something makes sense. And then the last bit is just sharing all the information. We cannot advocate for the project, you know, yes or no. That's the law, right? And we are very firm on that. If a no group asks us for information or a yes group asks us for information, we're gonna give them equal access. And at the same point though, our job is just to facilitate the facts. And so, you know, I said it last night in front of the community, I'm happy for someone to come and vote no for our project, as long as they have all the facts. It just might not make sense for you, and that's fine. That was a big piece of Travis's, you know, referendum process, was just acknowledging that it might not make sense for you. But if you understand why we got to where we are, then it's a successful job. And then really you zoom out. So that's the pre-referendum process. And then you have, you know, potentially, you know, months or years of construction, right? And you got, so you know, it takes a little bit of time to design. It takes a little bit of time to build and bid and all of that stuff. And there's always going to be things that you're checking off at the end. But the grand scheme is that, you know, in our world, getting to a successful vote is almost half the battle. And so rather than coming in and saying, we want to work for you for 6 months and we're going to do all these things for you, we'll take our $50,000, please. It's just not genuine, right? So if we've done this enough to where it averages out and we're a successful company because of it. And so hopefully it alleviates some of the concern of, well, you're just trying to build a big project. We're normally the advocates to get the budget down. It's normally you guys that are trying to drive the budget up. And, you know, if we ever get to that process, I think you guys will see that we're actively trying to make things smaller because we want the vote to pass, which means we want the dollar amount low. It keeps everybody honest. So this isn't a special Oaks deal. This is everybody. You can go to all of our districts that we work with. This is how we do business, and it makes for a much better process for you guys, for us. At the end of the day, we'll get paid because we will do a good job and the community will pay us. But if we don't do a good job, we don't deserve to get paid. So that's kind of just makes it very hard to argue that we're self-serving because.
Yeah,
I'll stop.
yeah, I did the cliff notes of what he just said is like 50,000, you gotta go to bid. It's not construction, if it's construction, obviously 200,000. The legislature is really trying to change that.
Yeah.
I advocate for them to change that because you really can't do anything anymore for less than $200,000. So I thought the legislature was gonna look at that and move that higher. I think they looked at 250. It's still not high enough, to be honest with you. It really needs to be $1 million before you go to bid, because you can't do anything for $1 million anymore, really, or less than that. As far as like the facility assessments that, you know, was mentioned, before the legislature kicks in dollars to school districts for building, they're going to require facility assessments. I mean, they just have to, like, the legislature just doesn't understand what schools have going on. And they could say, well, we want the school district to pay for it. Well, you're up against every single mill levy to try to pay for it, right? You're maxed in, and you're not alone. You're maxed in the building fund, you're maxed in a general fund, you're maxed in a miscellaneous fund, and the dollars just aren't there. And so the only way you can pay for it is to try to get your citizens to vote yes on something to give you more dollars. You're maxed out. And so the legislature is not going to kick in dollars until they fully understand what school districts are up against. And they're only going to understand that is if you have a facility assessment, which you're ahead of the game. You have a facility assessment that was done by a good company. They did a good, they did a job for you. And so you have a 10-year plan. And so until every district has that to show the legislature, here's what our districts are facing. Because we're seeing 1919, 1909, I mean, buildings that are, they're in a similar boat as a lot of school districts. And so, yeah, Icon, as far as what we do, yeah, we don't get paid unless your community says yes. I mean, we sit here with you and we go through this process, like you just said. We vet it with you. We take a vested interest in what you have going on. We look at all those pieces, education adequacy, all the stuff that ICS really did for you guys. We do the same stuff. Only we don't get paid unless it goes through. So that was the 45-second of what you just said.
Do you know the last time those numbers were raised, or when were they set at those dollar amounts? It was
$200,000 threshold.
Yeah.
It was 150 a few years back, so they moved it to 200. When that was, I'd have to go back and look. But
what committee does that go from?
It's a great question too. Ultimately, it goes to the committee of appropriations, right?
Yeah.
That's a great question, because if you think about like a boiler, like we don't want to be a part of a boiler project if we don't have to, right? But it ends up being a problem where you have to have somebody to do that. And you look at, so we just added a music classroom on in Emerito, it was $800,000. For us, that's an appropriate use for an architect. You're adding a classroom on, right? But again, we're beholden to all the same laws. And at the end of the day, I do think it's in your interest to make sure that the district's protected through whatever, projects take place.
How much was the bond referendum for Valley City that passed?
It hasn't passed, they just called for it for 46.
46 million.
Yeah, 46. Yeah.
Do you know what their upper limit is?
51, 52.
So they've asked for almost all of it.
Almost, yep. And we showed a lot of concern and we voiced a lot of concern. They have a couple of things going for them. They have unfortunately a lot of deferred maintenance coming up and code issues. The other piece too is that the prior option with, let's say, a prior architect was 90 million, and we came in with a little different methodology and a drastically different price. The other thing that they have, and I'll apologize now that this does have Valley City information on it, but it's fresh from last night. But they have information about the vote, about the legislative impact. And so that's where it's, the governor's 1176, the 1450, it's kind of hard for you guys to see. So they pulled up some examples, a $208,000 home, and their valuation is just about almost double what you guys are here. So basically whatever numbers you see for them, you can almost multiply it times 2 to get what it would be in Oaks. But, a $208,000 home, based on their current property tax, they are currently paying, let's see, annual property tax right here. So 2556. Then here's the tax impact of the referendum. Here's how much they would be charged with the referendum and their current tax impact. And then here's the relief. And so here's the net. And then you can see there's other homes, and there is a value for them where, the tax impact is 0 with or without the referendum.
When you say property tax relief, you're talking the homeowner?
Unfortunately, it's only primary residence.
That's what I was gonna say, that's a factor.
Yeah, and for us, we advocated strongly. 2 years ago, I started meeting with legislators to try to get Minnesota's method of property tax relief for ag land. It's funny, they're almost the exact opposite. It's only for ag land and it's only for school projects. I was reminded though, that state property tax on ag land in Minnesota is significantly more than. So it's like you can't win them all, but they have a program there. What we are hearing from the state is that the primary residence is the credit that's on target this session, and next session is ag land. You can take that for what it's worth, but the vast majority of the clients that we work with are rural school districts, and so the vast majority of the people that pay a big chunk of tax are ag and farm owners, and so we're very sensitive to that.
Our Senator Early is the one that's pushing hard on that.
Are they talking about rental property relief too?
Well, there was a rental one, so it's only people it's your primary residence, And if you are a renter instead of an owner, there was one, I don't know if it's still part of this or not. Yeah, I think it is. And there's also the homestead tax credit for if you're 65 or older. You know, you get, if it bumps it from 40,000 a year to $50,000 a year, or value where it's just covered, and then half credit from 40 or from 70 goes to 80. So, you know, you get half credit of your property tax up to 80,000, you know, if you're 65, or income's up to 80,000 if you're 65 or older. So there's different things out there. They're trying to do something, and we do appreciate this, but yeah, unfortunately, the scope right now is only primary residence.
Property tax on land in Minnesota, isn't it about 3 times what we? pay?
Yeah, it's a big chunk. So you get relief on the school project and you pay more for everything else. I mean, that's where I was politely told by a legislator that if we wanted that, it means you get that. And do you think that's what you want to tell people? And I said, no, thank you. Appreciate that.
And it's unfortunate, like if you look, when we did that project, it was first was gonna be a $20 million project, got voted down. And then, we came back with a $10 million project, and the cities of Zap, Golden Valley and Dodge all consolidated into Beulah. As the superintendent of that district, I went out to those communities and finally just had to tell folks like, you know, totally understand if you're voting no, can't afford it, or it just doesn't seem right, you know, especially to the ag folks. It's like, oh no, but you know, these are the issues that we have. I'm not trying to muffle the issues. These are the issues we have. You as a landowner, just look at it and say, I just can't do it, then I totally respect that. Like, fine. You vote no, but at the end of the day, the issues are still the issues. You vote no, it is what it is. And so it's unfortunate. I wish there was some property tax relief out there for ag land, ag owners. Say they're gonna do it in 2 years.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's all just about options. You know, whatever it is that folks think we need, there's got to be some sort of, well, if not, then what's this? And then that's all we're trying to do, is just make decisions based on it's this or that. Okay, now it's this or that. It could, if your decision is to do nothing, that is a decision, right? And so sometimes that's the case, and we just have to make sure that we go through it. We all understand what are the benefits, what are the disadvantages, what are the repercussions. You know, in Dickinson, you know, they were very plain about, you know, with the maintenance that was required. If they didn't tear down the older parts, you know, they would have to change the activities programs. They would have to cut transportation, and they were just, and they showed the facts. They're just like, here's the facts. You guys make your decisions, you know. And I'd say whatever it is that this committee wants to do, no matter what, it shouldn't be that we come to the table, there's one option. We need to think about, well, if you don't, then what? Or if it's different, or what's in between. That's a big part.
The other thing with Valley City, I'll say too, is not only they're looking at this, but they're also bringing a school district offline. You know, and so they're looking at, you know, what are the district savings in terms of taking the school district offline, school building offline. And then they're obviously building a new one, but so they're this, what a gap that is coming off their books with an aging facility. But I mean, that'll help, that helps them, even though they're at the top of their deli.
And they're the same age as we are, if I'm not mistaken. And so the building they're taking offline, is that older, or is it just not been maintained?
It's their high school. It's the old building that they have.
Yep.
And then they're taking down Jefferson.
Yeah, it's 1919, 1940s, 1950s high school additions. They're still keeping their athletics facilities in some of the 1970s. Then they have another elementary that was built in the 50s that is just a lot of maintenance is going into it. So Washington, so they would sell the Washington, they would sell their district office, they would take the older spaces in the high school offline and take all of those functions and consolidate into one.
And so they're gonna be really clear on what that dollar amount is, you know, as they go forward and have their community meetings.
And you guys already having a group like this is, you're ahead of the game, you already have the assessment. This is kind of the process that we followed for Valley City, again, just to show you, because we just presented it again last night. And first thing is get the assessment done. You already got that. Next thing is get a committee. You've already got that. You know, kick off the committee. Well, you've already done that. I mean, you guys are poised to make some sort of decision, and I would say I appreciate that you guys have kind of done the first steps, and then it's, you know, ultimately in the day, you guys have to decide what you want to do. The way that we work is that we would ask you what it is that you feel are priorities, and then how do we target those priorities while balancing every dollar.
This is their first referendum.
Yep. So they did a survey. So the one thing that they did that I don't know that you guys have done, and it's something that we strongly recommend, is doing an independent survey that's not from the architects, it's not from anyone that does construction, it's not the school. There's companies, there's a couple that we work with that do these independent surveys that are statistically valid, they're, you know, individually numbered, mailed to every house. And from that information, we can very accurately project what it is that the community wants to do. So, you know, for an example, it could be that it's like, okay, you know, option one is invest $2 million into this. Option two is $3 million into this. And not leave it up to chance, let the community weigh in.
Can you get those numbers without going to a vote for like bids?
That's exactly, yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. That's our business, right? Just going through and saying, we need to understand scope, and we do enough projects to where we can get information. There's two.
You're not getting bids, so
No,
he's asking
no,
about bids.
no,
You're
no.
just taking what you're.
Your generalized number.
Yep. Thank you. Yeah. So as you can see here, like, it's not a school that's designed. You know, if you looked at like the vote in Mandan, for example, they only had a bullet list. You look at the vote in Killdeer, they had a square. In Dickinson, they had something very similar to this, where we are purposefully not going through design. We go through programming, we make sure we have enough space allocated. You either have two rules of thought: if you bring on some sort of cost consultant at the beginning, or something where you have like a construction manager at the end or the beginning, you can do either or, but no matter what, we always go and get numbers from construction managers. Sometimes you hire them, and sometimes we ask them just for a favor to just take our information and make sure it's still valid in the next week, the next month, the next year. We did just have Dickinson go out to bid a week ago, so we have very good information. But what's great is that we go through and we ask, so here, this is Dickinson itself, or not Dickinson, Killdeer. So what was interesting is we went that I showed you, it took about 1.5 years. For them, a big thing was that they didn't have land. You know, they're kind of landlocked where their high school was, so they had to locate that, and that took a while. Well, at the end of this, it was the same board meeting where they closed all of the schools for COVID, was the same board meeting they called for the vote. And that seems crazy. And we had to do all of our public meetings like via Zoom, and we had like drive up voting. It was bananas, but we had so many meetings already and spent so much time that everyone believed in the process and the results so much that we went through with it. And, you know, here's an example of the results that you get. And what was great was they asked, do you want an expanded gym? Do you want a performing arts space? Do you want expanded shop space, career and technology space? The school got a positive for the high school. They did not get a positive for the gym or the performing arts, and then they got a positive for the shop. So that's what we went to a vote for. And what's pretty wild then, and you can see just, again, more ways to explain what the solutions are. So this is an example. Oh, here you go, right here. So here's an example. This is their survey. So the base referendum, 23 million. And then these different pieces along with tax impact. Sorry, guys, you can't put that. So building a second gym, the ag space, performing arts, you know, they had support for the high school and that. And so you can see, you know, we called for a vote and they projected that you would get a 61.25% yes. And we got 62% yes. It's just, you know, Devil's Lake, you know, you can go back to the board meetings. We did the survey, and after the survey, we said, don't do this. We very publicly, I stood in the board meeting, it's recorded, and I said, do not do this. The board went ahead and it failed. And not only did it fail, we predicted where it would fail by whatever, 8 points or whatever it was. We changed the scope, reduced the price a little bit, passed the next time, no problem. You know, so it's just, for us, it's very important to operate on data and not opinions. And so this is something that costs money. It costs like 10 grand a lot of times. So give or take. It's not our money. It doesn't ever touch us, but we think it's so valuable and so important We just met with Jamestown this morning on their survey, finalizing the draft. Their survey is going out in a few weeks. We don't like to go to a vote guessing. We want to know what the outcome is way before. And so this has just been very, very powerful for us. So if it's something that you haven't done, I would strongly encourage it. I know you do have some survey information. It's a real cost, but if it were my dollars, you know, the cost of a special election is more than the cost of the survey. So a failed vote is more expensive than just getting the facts.
We did it in Beulah too. The first referendum we didn't do a survey. It was 20 million. We asked for pretty much probably should ask for, but failed. And then we did the survey, and the survey came back and told us exactly what our constituents would pay for. They'd pay for a $10 million referendum, and that was it. It told us the percentage, and it was right on. We did the survey. 73% said they would support a $10 million referendum, but to a vote, 73%. So, I mean, it was, if, you know, we didn't really know about the survey prior to the first referendum. We knew about it the second time we did it. I would never do a project without doing that ever again.
So you're talking Valley City, they're building a new school, $40 million. Their taxable valuation is right up there. Ours is 22.
23.
Okay. You're not gonna get much for $22 million, are you?
Yeah, you know, to be honest, I don't know what you guys need. I mean, we're doing a project in Medina. It's a $3 million classroom addition.
I mean, we just failed something just under 15 million. Put in air conditioning, windows. Plumbing.
88 bathrooms.
Yeah, I mean, but the air conditioning, heating, that was the big one.
Yeah.
Um,
You guys, I think, have a really unfortunate problem in that this is pretty nice space, right? And I would say maybe the average community member doesn't get into the weeds of the mechanical system. They don't touch it, feel it, breathe it, understand it. So when you have those heavy, I would say beneath the skin projects, it just is very difficult without getting people to really understand.
So I just speak for myself only, but I think I speak for a lot of people in this committee, and a lot of people in our community. I think everybody realizes that the school is in need of some serious deep skin and behind the weeds type projects like you're talking. And maybe the point was, you know, when the referendum came out, and I'm just going to use a generic number, that the consulting firm said it was $1.8 million to refurbish the kitchen. Okay, as general John Q. Public guy, to me, that seems like an absorbent amount of money to fix the kitchen. And not throwing daggers or hammers or nothing at anyone. It's like, as a taxpaying, so what was I getting for this 1.8 million? You know, was it this, and this? You know, same one went to the HVAC system, and it was like $12.7 million. It's like, holy moly, Marion School built a 38,000 square foot building for the same money. And I get that things cost money, especially when you start tearing into walls. But like to Kyle's point about like a bid, if we actually had, and I'm all for not just giving it to a relative or something, but you have to have different contracts. You know, you're getting the best bang for your buck. I think, at least in my opinion, the school district taxpayers would have been maybe more represented, respectful to the project if we knew exactly what we were getting for what we were paying. So that's where, like, if we, and once again, my opinion only, if we had, you know, the contractor or contractors that could come in and bid and say, you know what, for $6 million, I can do this. And then it's up to the school district, the school board to say, yep, that serves our purpose. We know we can't afford a Cadillac, but we don't want something that 5 years from now, we're right back in the same debacle we're in now. So is there a way, even if it costs the school district some money up front and we have to go to the local bank and say, hey, you know what, you're here for our community, you say all the time, give us a $500,000 interest at cheap money so we can have contractors or architects, engineers, whoever come in and actually say, this is what you get for this amount of money.
Do you have an example of what you mailed out to people in like Valley that said, okay,
Yeah,
Kind
not,
of what you're looking for.
we haven't, yeah, we haven't mailed that out
Like,
yet. but-
can you get what he's asking for? Like, can we declare an emergency? I've read a little bit on the emergency part here. Is there a way we can get some of this stuff? Like, anybody that runs a business and
I mean, I wouldn't have somebody come to my house and say, for $100,000, I can fix your air conditioner. If there's any money left over, I'll send you the check back. I mean, I guess I wouldn't do that at my house without them coming and say, okay, it's gonna cost you this amount of money for a new blower, this amount of money for a new this amount of money for that. I don't know if you need an itemized bill for every nut and bolt, but you kind of see where I'm saying. I think the community, or at least the circle of people I communicated with, it was like, go back to the $1.8 million for the kitchen is, man, you can build an awful nice house for less than that much. How are you getting this much money in just a kitchen? Where if you would have had an architect, engineering, because, I mean, no matter what project we're talking about here, it's gonna go over that map for $200,000, so it needs to be engineer and architect. Can the school go and spend money on their own to get the architect, engineer to draw a plan and say this, get contractors, and then once we have actual numbers, hey, do your survey monkey thing or whatever, we can get this for this for that, you know.
Yes, you could absolutely do that. I would say that generally, when we go through our process, we probably get 90% of there without having to fork over the 50 grand or whatever it is to pay the engineers. So here, here's an example. And the other thing I would say is, let's go back actually. So let's say you hired an architect and they hired the engineers, they did all the work, they did all the design, you got your set of bid documents, and you put it out to bid. Well, generally those bids are held for 30 or 45 days. So by the time you actually go into a vote and explain, let's say that's 65, 75 days, you'd have to potentially go through the effort of bidding it out and then getting people to hold their bids for a pretty extended period of time. So you might end up then spending your 50 grand extra again. So for us, it's always just about like, can we be smart and use information to infer, understanding that all we have is our reputation. I can provide you guys with 20 references that'll tell you that we've done this exact process. And I'd say most of the time if we're not, very close, there's a time when the project came back over $400,000 on a $5 million project. That was not nothing, right? Well, it's not the school's responsibility to fix that. It's the architects and the construction person to fix that. So we had to go back and redesign something and then figure it out and then bid it. And then we don't get paid extra. It's on us because that's our mess up, right? So it's a little tricky. So let me show you this, for example. So this is from Crookston. This was building a bus garage or a transportation facility, let's say. So they had a failed vote. It was about $3 million. And then we were brought in afterwards. And ultimately, we had, and I'd say what's really important is we had people very similar to this sitting around the table that had just built a Quonset or just built a shop. And they were like, I don't understand. I can build this for $890,000. Absolutely, you can. So what we said was, here's all the reasons that things for public entities cost more, not schools, public entities, because that's the law, right? You have to make sure, first of all, you have to have a licensed contractor out there that's keeping the space safe for everyone out there working. You have to have site work, you have to have mechanical, electrical, you have to have building, life safety. Then you have to have all the costs that come with just being a public entity. And so at the end of the day, the building, yes, is still $890,000. It's just all the other things that if you are a private person, you could do that and you could just put up some shop fans and be good to go, but a school district can't. So we went through this exercise and this effort, and ultimately we went back to a vote with an almost identical number amount, and it passed because we explained where the numbers came from. And I would say if you got a $1.4 million number on your kitchen, you should be able to ask questions. And I would say it's unfortunate because they probably had answers and maybe it just didn't get out.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but generally when you look at, you look at what you're trying to do. So here was the big thing for them was they said, again, there were some folks in the ag community that were like, we can build a shop 5 different ways. Why are you showing us a middle building? And so we went through the exercise of all the different ways to build it and to understand what their goals were. And ultimately, the decision they picked wasn't the most expensive and it wasn't the cheapest, but it was the one that made the most sense for them. I would just say, like, you have to be a little agile and make sure that we answer the questions. But at the same point, you know, if you want to go through that, and I'd say if you're looking at an architectural, you know, fee of 6%, 7%, 8% on a $10 million project, right? So then if it's $10 million of construction and you're looking at 6, 7, 8%, that's $800,000. So that's not 50 grand. So that, you know, to get you through bidding, that's about 60, 70% of the whole design process. I don't know that we would ever sign up for pay us 400 grand and we sure hope it works out. Like, that just doesn't feel right. And so, you know, even Mandan School, like we didn't do any design work, even though we knew there was gonna be some work that would happen no matter what until the vote passed. I just think you need more data, and I just can't speak for others, but we would strive to provide more data. Let me see if I can find another example.
So the initial answer to his question, oh,
Yes.
this is,
Yes, you could, absolutely. It's just your money.
So
either way it is.
Either way it is, yep. We argue that the community, we've seen too many cities and counties, and not to pick on them, you know, they build a shop and don't ask anybody, and then the bill just shows up on your taxes the next year. And man, does that drive people crazy when they don't get a say.
personal survey that I did after the vote failed was people saw that as a slush fund for the board to do what they wanted to do after they got the money. And it was a lot of money. And I think what the focus needs to be on is fixing a problem. Just pick a problem and fix it. Prove to the public that we can fix a problem, and they will give us money for it. And then once that problem is solved, then go back to them, ask to solve another problem. When you group all these things together, all of a sudden becomes overwhelming to everybody, and nobody believes anything. So I think you have to regain trust.
I have a question for you about that, but you said it's a slush fund. I thought we were gonna vote on item 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's what the board was gonna do. It wasn't like, am I wrong in not thinking?
No, so Judy had a really good question on that too, so the money for the bond referendum, it is spelled out in law exactly what it could be used for. And there was only 4 things it could be used for. It could not be used for anything else. And if the projects came in at a lower bid, we couldn't just say, oh, we're gonna do this project instead. That money would be put into the bank, or we wouldn't take the loan out or whatever that it would be, but we would not be able to spend it. Only the things that are legally listed on the bond, those are the only things that can be used for,
What public's perception is.
But we were told what she just said.
all the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I just want to point one thing out, because I kind of see where this whole conversation is going right now. And I see we're going down probably the same road. You can look online right now and there's 4 people online. And we're gonna go down this same path. And it's gonna be on everybody in this room, whether we spend $100,000 or we go through a whole bond referendum. So having us in front of this and being able to talk positively about it or point out the negatives or however you want to perceive it. This is why we have problems in this community, is because it gets filtered through here and then it gets shot out because there's 4 people watching. Okay, so we're at 2, we're at 2. So, okay, so that's just one, that's just. Yeah. That's just something I just want to throw out there. Is what we got.
So I just pulled out the ballot from last year, and it says, for the purpose of providing funds together with any other funds available for high school and gymnasium HVAC and window replacement, new ADA compliant restrooms for the 2nd and 3rd floor, underground sewer piping replacement, kitchen renovation and improvements. Yes or no?
And that's all the money, that's the only thing it could be spent for.
But like Scott's point is, when you don't get a bid for anything and you throw numbers on things that nobody can make sense to themselves, then they start asking, where's all the extra money gonna go? And I'm not saying that anybody had any wrong plan, that was perception.
But we can't get bids.
And I would say
Right,
that I can't think of a time when there was bids before a vote ever. You know,
I just asked that, I thought you said
Yes.
it would be. it
You
would
can't think of a
be-
time, he said. He
I
didn't
can't
say-
think of a time it's been done. You could do it.
So when we fixed that third room floor, so that floor there, we had the money in hand, right? So we went out, we got our architect, and then we put that out on bids. Because we had the money to fix it, we didn't have to go through the design bid process. We had the money.
Through the bid, you didn't have to go through the vote process.
No, the vote process, but I mean, you know, we were able to go out and get our architect, we were able to put it out on bids because we had the money to pay for it. But we don't have the money right now, to go out and hire an architect or engineer and just throw that money away.
But and I'm just playing devil's advocate, and I don't,
That was good.
that regardless, moving forward, we're gonna have to have an engineer and architect
Well, an engineer anyway, right?
at our projects. Because every one of them's over $200,000. And you can make the argument, well, we can only replace $199,000 worth of windows and whatever. We don't need to go down that hole. But regardless, the school district is going to have to pay for architecture and engineering. Whether we pay for it up front, after the vote passes, somewhere in the middle. The only caveat, maybe where is what you're saying is, Anna, is we would have to go borrow that engineering money up front and have to pay interest on that for probably 6 months to a year before the referendum. And if the referendum didn't pass, we're out our engineering money, correct? I just want to make sure that I wasn't the valedictorian of 91 like Mr. Stiver was, but I just want to make sure that I've got it right in my mind, because I don't want to misspeak if I get asked, or I want to try to have the committee as informed as they can. You have to have an engineering study done no matter what.
We'll design. You have to have it done before you can bid. You have to have something to bid. And that's
Exactly.
why you can't just have someone come out and say, do this. They're gonna say, well, what kind of carpet did you, or what kind of block are we having? Or what kind of door handles? Like, it's a lot. You know, what's interesting is, so when we go through a vote, the level of detail, we probably have 3 or 4 pages of detail, of plans to show you and understand this is what a 2-story space and a 1-story space, and we don't go into 3 dimensions, we don't show pretty pictures on purpose. But when you get to a bidding set, that's 400 pages a lot of times for a small project, for Medina's $3 million project. So, you know, that's a lot of effort too. So you'd have to put that out to bid, and your contractors would say, okay, well, when are you bidding this? Oh, well, we've got to pass the vote. It's just like if you sell a house contingent on your other house. You know, are you gonna get the contractors to put their pencils to the paper? Because for them to actually apply a bid is a lot of effort, just like going through all of this process. So I've never seen it done. You absolutely could. You 100% could. I've never seen. And we architects still get paid, so it's not like we're advocating for us. I'm just saying.
I guess I'm asking, what's the downside of it?
It's a huge sum of money, in my opinion, that would be contingent on a vote. And then you also have to stand there and tell your voters that we decided this is what's right and we spent the money. Now do you support it?
And if they don't, where does the school come up with that money?
Right, I know, yeah, when Shannon will talk finances next year, we were in the red in our building fund, and she'll talk more about this, $250,000 2 years ago.
Because of that upstairs project, or just in general?
Just in general, all the things that went south
That
on
was
us,
before the science.
the plumbing, all of those pieces, because our building fund only pulls in, we're at 20 mils at about $460,000, and that pays for all of our maintenance during the year.
Plus the other 12, okay, so it's like 660.
Yeah, no, so that other 12 mils, we have not always had that on there. This is the first year, so we haven't always pulled 12 miscellaneous because the board tried to be super conservative and good to the taxpayers and not constantly raise the taxes. So they were very conservative on that piece, so.
So your annual budget for maintenance is what?
Or less than $460,000.
And your annual tax receipts for maintenance now with all the levies and stuff is what?
What do you, wasn't that the
with the mills, all the mills that you're collecting now for the.
Plus the
building
one
fund?
there, right?
The building fund is about $468,000 is what the
If
budget.
we collect everybody's
We
taxes,
collect
right?
Everything.
So it
What-
doesn't all-
Is that the extra that you just started doing this year?
No,
No.
that's the 20 mills in the building fund.
Okay, how much is including the extra that you started doing this year?
The 12 mils is about 230, about 280.
So now we're up to about 700,000?
If it all would go, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but
so
we don't use all of that 12 mills into the building fund. The 12
No.
mills is the miscellaneous, that's for, a lot of it is building stuff, but there's other things that go into that. Because that's not a specific building fund.
You don't have to use it in the building fund, but you can
No.
use it all in the building.
Yeah, we can use it on computers, technology, we could use it.
That's when you mentioned using it on bus potentially.
Which was between $155,000 and $160,000 was the quote for a new bus.
How much is in the building fund currently today?
Oh, John, you're asking me questions that I don't have in my head. And I don't
Approximately?
necessarily carry them.
So while Shannon's looking for that, just, and if you really want to kick me off, that's fine.
No, I'm glad you're asking them.
It is, so somewhere between a 3 or 4, 6, 7 page document that you would kind of typically provide to a 400-page document that has what bolts going on what nuts and what color paint you're gonna use. Is there some happy medium where you can have architects, engineer come in, just say, not, I think we could do it for this, or, you know, these would be our options without getting an actual contractor in here to say, I can do this for exactly this much. How can we get a more?
Would you trust it though?
That's why I failed. That's exactly what they did the first time.
So ultimately, and I would say
I would like to, just one thing. So we hired a company to do a 10-year facility project for us. We had the critical failure, and then they came in and they did a lot more work for us, for free. We paid them for that 10-year plan, and that's all we paid. $17,000, right? And they gave us all you're talking about, Scott. They gave us the Cadillac version. They gave us the middle of the road version. They gave us, you were at a lot of the, or I think you were at some of those meetings. We were up in the high school there. A lot of other people were for those meetings too. They gave us a lot of those things. And you brought up the 1.8 for the kitchen. And John, you did too. Like, what is that gonna be used for? They told us exactly what it's gonna look like. They showed us some pictures of what it's gonna look like. And you said you wouldn't even show us pictures. They did all that stuff. You guys didn't trust it. And I'm just being frank.
No, and you're right, but in my mind, how would you justify paying $1.8 million for a kitchen remodel?
Because they did that company did $2 billion worth of school construction.
Yeah, I'd say
And they said, this is what it's gonna cost. And I trusted that.
kitchen equipment is probably one of the least variable items. If you wanted to go, there's food service design folks that we use because that's their expertise. In our project in Dickinson, we have a food service consultant. It's a $6,000 or $7,000 fee that Icon pays. And they do that and they design the kitchen. I'd say that's probably one of your spaces that you're gonna know the cost, that and like an auditorium. Those are nationwide costs that don't change very much, you know?
I guess where I'm going with all this is we had a referendum that failed.
Yep.
We can't do the same thing or it's gonna fail again.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm spitballing, throwing
Sure.
right out the wall.
Yep.
How do we come out of this committee and go to the public and say, hey, you know what, let's completely forget about what ICS, because honestly, I think it left a sour taste in some people's mouth in town, and it's gonna be what it's gonna be. But we can't do the same thing and expect a different result. So how can we, and like you said, Greg, and I'm not disputing what you said, and how do we get more information out to people that, hey, you know what? I think it's ludicrous that the kitchen costs 1.8 million, but you know what? Maybe that's what it costs. And then, okay, well, we can't afford that, you know, and I just said, so I'm a hypocrite for saying this, but when you go to ICS's 10-year budget or 10-year thing and it was $38 million. Okay, if we wanted to do every single thing and everybody's all for it, we can't. We're capped at 23 million, so we got $15 million more on our Christmas wish list. So, and I'm sure it's no different in Beulah and all these other smaller school districts. We don't have the money, and my concern is that if we spend 15 or 12 million dollars to fix an air conditioning, that's roughly half of our allotted budget. Okay, that's for 20 years. Now, we know it, this building is aging, the elementary is building aging. So for 20 years now, the next 20 years, we're working on basically essentially half a budget because we did one project. Now what happens when we have bigger issues and we're at our mill levy cap and that's the part that concerns me. Not that I don't think that we shouldn't have air conditioning or, you know, you kids figured out I had to walk to school uphill both ways. That's not where we're going with this. Is that we can't afford to spend $12 million on one project, which is half of our, I'll just quit there, but.
You know, go ahead, sorry.
I'm gonna make one comment too, just on that, I think, cause when you did that survey, you know, you said you filled one out, I think I filled one out. That was just through the school, you had to go on the website and fill it out, right?
Right,
Or
no,
how
so
was that? I don't.
We have had the surveys done that, so, you know, we brought the people in and then that committee came up, you know, and then we did the surveys of the people, like, what are your priorities? What do you think we should do?
But how was that survey presented? Cause they were talking, it was a mailer to your
Yep.
address, correct?
Yes,
Was-
and
Was ours a mail? I
yeah,
don't.
Rappin Associates did the business for us and it was sent out to
Each.
everybody.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was a separate, and so they did, do you remember when they came, we had the listening sessions, and they came up with the priorities, and then the people voted for them, and then the surveys came in, and then that's where those things that came up that we decided to go with were things that people, the surveys came back that that's what people wanted, but return rate on surveys, low. Low. And we paid, you know, for all of, you know, we paid Rappin Associates to do all of those surveys.
I just couldn't remember how that was.
Yeah.
I don't, part of, one reason why I think that failed, and this is a simple reason. A $4,000 window. That was what I was told the whole time. I think that's ridiculous. We just put windows in a lake place in Minnesota. About the same time. 14 windows. And some of them were in a garage this big. So we're just taking the average here. Granted, there's some other ones that were bigger. $2,300 a window. Big amount put them in a ranch style house. So when I saw the $4,000, I'm thinking, okay, this is a 3-story building. They're bringing it in. It takes time when you're up there and you're working there. We weren't. So that to me, just a little bit of legwork, thought, okay, 4,000 is a lot, but maybe I'm dumb, but I just paid 2,300 a window on the average. So right there, I go, okay, that number is probably right. Ridiculous number.
So whether it's ridiculous or not, it all comes back to, can we as a school district afford to, you know, I'm not here to say which projects we should or shouldn't do. I'm just curious, and whether, do I want to pay more tax? No, nobody does. But I'm more on the side of the fence that if we spend too much money now, what are we gonna do 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now? Because that referendum doesn't go away in 2 or 3 or 4 years. That's 20 years. So we also have to have a long-term thought process that, you know,
This thing,
is,
the building we want to stick with, or
I think the building you have to stick with, we just don't have the means to build a school. But, you know, hey, I know that, you know, and I'm no HVAC guy by any means. Do you do a splitter? Yeah, it's not the Cadillac version, but if we can save $3 or $4 million and allocate them funds to other projects that are on that 10-year plan or whatever. I just don't want to see the school district spend a bunch of money that maybe there was some cost savings. I mean, I'll be blunt and honest, I talked to a company that gave an estimate on the windows was $350,000 less than what the school original bid was.
R15. So our original bid that we had to do all the facades of our windows was 1.5.
It was an actual bid.
Yeah, because we thought we were gonna have enough money with our COVID dollars before so the science room floor was bid, or not bid. The architect's estimate was just over $200,000. Well, the bid we ended up spending almost $700,000 because the bids came in, nobody wanted to bid the project, so then the price just went up because of the one bidder. So we thought we were gonna have enough money that we were gonna be able to do the windows, so we got bids for all of the different facades, thinking, let's do the south, let's do the west. And that came in at 1.5. But if we did it as a whole project, it was under $1 million. Because they were in there, they were gonna be doing it at that time. And that's one thing with our long-term plan, one of the things they told us was, these are for standalone projects, so your dollars go up, right? Versus if you do them all together at one time, your dollars for the project, those individual go down because you're in there, you've got things torn up, you can put the windows in at that time versus if you just come in and you do those windows, just the windows, so.
Where we just feel like my office have 2 windows that open, but there's actually like 5 or 6 windows outside on the building. When I talked to Craig back today, he talked to me all the windows back originally. I still only have 2 open, but I would actually see if this with that bid to do like a whole window, or just.
They were gonna look like windows, but it wasn't gonna be windows. The facade was, but it wasn't gonna be windows, because that was too expensive to do that, so that's why we didn't go with that.
So one of the things I just add, just like I would say, a different opinion potentially. It could be, do you get electrical and mechanical engineers, do you just get a second opinion, and is there another engineer? We aren't a one-stop shop, kind of on purpose. We want to be able to hold our partners accountable. We have no electrical mechanical in-house. We have a couple that we work with on schools and that get it, we design. So I've got this up here. You can simplify it to the, what's the Chevy and what's the Cadillac and what's the geometric, right? But for us, there's every decision that we make, it has to fall somewhere here. Do you want the best of it? Do you want it now, or do you want the most of it? And you can't have it all though, right? And so what we've found is that because we just have certain relationships with engineers that understand, we actually feel like you should design a system where once a year you're uncomfortable. Once a year it gets hot. Guess what? You save 10% on the whole thing. And so we have some adverse relationships, I'd say, because there's some engineers that want to engineer things. And we kind of push back against that because unfortunately, like a mechanical system or a kitchen or whatever, it can be perceived that you're going too far, when in reality, you're just designing what's right. But if you think about what are the options, and I'd say, going to a vote, again, for us, I guess we're kind of in the trust business, really. Like, if you don't trust us, then it doesn't really matter, right? So if we can't give you enough information to make you believe what we're saying, then you're just gonna vote no. And I feel like you probably had all the information, it just maybe wasn't delivered in a way that was clear or made sense or answered the questions. The slide I showed you about that bus barn, that was because a gentleman stood up and said, explain to me why this could be. And I can't speak for anyone else, but if someone questioned the kitchen, I would have done that exact same thing and shown you, here's your hood that cost $180,000. Here's your range, that's 220. Here's this, here's that. Because, the truth is with the kitchen, you have so much to deal with mechanical systems and venting and hoods and where's the oil going and all these different, it's expensive, I just think those are the questions, if everyone in this room agrees something needs to be done, that's great. That's half the battle. Then we have to prove that it's actually the right thing to do, versus doing nothing or versus doing something in between. And I don't know how that was presented or how you guys went through that, that decision process. I don't know the process before. I'm just saying that's how we try to do it.
And what was maybe I saw it, but what was the 10-year deferred maintenance on the 10-year plan? 38.
So here's something what Scott said about found a bid, it was 350,000. We were voting on a 1.8 for the windows. But that wasn't a bid, right? That was money that we
You told me,
voted on.
you told me you got a $300 seat budget. What do you think of the site seat for?
Yes.
Well, but if it's a bid,
That's the whole point of the taxpayers, why they vote. Because it was
But-
never like put in. slow.
I get that. I get that, but it's still a bid process, and if there's more than one bid, would this guy come in at 1.8 as well? Is what you're saying, right? Okay, so he doesn't care if he gets the job.
Code improvement bids $300 a mile for gravel. And you call in and you know what it is, it's $298, right? You're gonna bid just under it, right? It's like the price is right.
You know, I understand that, but it's still, yeah, it should be competitive.
It is competitive, and I would say that our
Do
votes,
this.
our bids in Dickinson came back way under. And our Grand Forks project, so the total project budget was 52, the construction was 42, we came in $7 million under. We added all the alternates, additional classroom space, gym space, common space, and returned $2 million to the taxpayer.
Usually that's all sealed bid, though, isn't it?
It's sealed bid, yeah.
Yeah, so you can't.
It's not,
Yeah.
there's, and we also encourage that you don't hire contractors that also want to bid the project, because a lot of contractors don't want to submit their bids to their competitors. So we like to have a self-performance clause or discussion when we talk about contractors and things like that.
So the architects don't get a percentage of the project,
Oh, that's how we're paid. Yep, it's a percentage of the construction.
but that's what you just said, you're dealing yourself.
Yeah, we made more money, we made less money on, we will make less money on Dickinson and Grand Forks, but we'll get another job. I mean, it's worth us to, 80 grand to get another job in the next year, to be honest. I mean, that's, it's just like, you gotta have these conversations with people. I mean, there is some people, there are some firms that do guaranteed energy savings contracts and all this stuff that I don't believe in. But then there's also the fact of someone's building schools out there. I mean, Mike Bitts, he's the superintendent in Mandan. He was our first client when Icon became a firm 23 years ago. We worked for him and did 6 projects in Hillsborough, and we're now on our 6th or 7th in Mandan. We don't nickel and dime, we pick up the phone, we do what they say, we don't do what we want. Like, unfortunately, that's not the standard, right? And so I'd say we are a little different, and that's why I think we're so successful with referendums, is because I can stand there and say, we've been working for 6 months and I haven't seen a penny. I don't care what she thinks. I promise you that. But the questions that you're asking, I'm sorry. The questions that you're asking, and to be honest, that question I've never heard. I've been doing this for a long time. I've never heard that question. Like, I can't say that I've gotten a new question in maybe 5 years, right? So that's what we need, challenge. What's the mistake that was made before? And if we go in the public meeting and the public says, spend 400 grand, get the right answer, so I know exactly, and then come back to me, then heck, we'll do it. But we just haven't seen that before. I'm trying to find some more examples of just the level of information, so that you can get a little bit more of a idea about what we provide.
Can we actually get an HVAC engineer maybe to our next meeting?
No, absolutely.
So that we can talk.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna speak.
No, well, next one is our fiscal, so
No, we're to do fiscal.
next week, and then we'll have all the.
Okay, well, we can maybe invite one to be here for 20 minutes and explain to us why it costs 12 million and not 4 million to put a new HVAC system in.
And I would recommend, they're Prairie engineers out of Minot, Bismarck. They are stand-up fellows. They generally jump when we ask them to. I would humbly request, if you only want them for 20 minutes, to maybe let them call in. Just because it might be a 4-hour drive. But they're the people that we like to bring along because they get the real world.
Who did you say that was?
Prairie engineers.
Minot.
Minot and Bismarck, yep, and they have electrical and mechanical.
Oh, yeah.
No affiliation
Yeah,
to
but they-
Icon. We just do a lot of work together for schools. And it's on purpose. And so, here's an example of Dickinson, like, this is what they had when we voted. This version to illustrate, we know the amount of spaces they need. and we roughly know that it'll fit on the site. You know, that was about it. Oh, we did get a little fancy. And we put a little box. So they could see what that looks like to build on that site. But that's it, right? And at the end of the day, you know, we had to stand there and in front of the superintendent and the school board and the committee that helped get to this decision and stand behind our word. And that's all we really have at the end of the day. Yeah, I'm trying to see, let me see if I can find you another slide.
Can I interrupt? And I
Yeah.
think part of the problem is, from the last referendum, is we couldn't have something like that. Because that's a new building.
Yep.
We have the same building. All we could show would be pipes and HVAC things above the ceiling tiles. Well, that's not a picture.
Yep.
That's not what you didn't get that.
Yep.
And so then it was hard to visualize what was going to be happening.
Yeah,
You can't,
it's hard. I mean, Mandan, we had a gentleman from our Mandan office crawl into the failed tunnel. Because their mechanical system had actually gotten to the point where it failed and there was actually a tunnel that collapsed. So that's where we have to tell the story. And if the story isn't compelling, then we have to add more information. We have to figure out what that is. I mean, if this group, I feel like this is a diverse group. If this group could agree on something, we probably have told the story well enough. And I would venture to say that this group probably isn't in consensus right now, which is ideal. You don't want anyone to be at that. But if something needs to happen, and if everyone in this group agrees that something needs to happen, then you're there. Then we have to say, okay, well, if it's a mechanical system, why exactly? Well, because it's failing. Well, what do you mean it's failing? Well, because we can't get parts. Okay, what do you mean you can't get parts? Oh, well, we can have someone fabricate the part, but then it'll break again. And then, you know, we were working with Cole and Beulah, right? And we can't get this part, someone has to make it. And we can fix it, but now our operational costs are still gonna be $100,000 more than they should be if we had just replaced it. You know, we just gotta keep going further to the point where it makes sense to you guys, and then you take it to the next level.
What would you suggest our next steps going forward would be?
I have one. I think the room needs to probably vent some maybe frustration. I can think you guys are frustrated that the last one failed, or just that you're even having to revisit this again, right? I mean, it's frustrating to go through the process, but we're a small group and I'm a dumb guy, but I talk to a lot of people that voted no, and they want concrete numbers coming forward, and they're just gonna keep going no. So I think it'd be good to just get it out there. I don't want to live in a echo chamber either.
okay, so we haven't started the budget yet, but in 24-25, we were just operating on a deficit the way it was. If we were to borrow $500,000 or to find $500,000, there are going to be cuts.
500 for what?
To do the architecture and engineering.
How like 100?
What can I cut for
Yeah.
100,000?
Or
Anybody got ideas for me?
the idea would be you would have an engineer do it, and then he wouldn't get paid until you pass the 500.
Yeah, you just have to find out how to go do it.
Right.
Well, you know, you have 29 million, I think, in deferred maintenance, the way it looks to me, and this is high school, elementary, it's all kind of morphed into one thing here. I think it would be beneficial to separate, look at what are your issues in high school? What are your issues in the elementary school? And then and I'm totally, whatever you guys decide to do, but so in Beulah, we did that, and one of our issues was windows. And we were heating basically the street outside the school. And so after we did our boiler project, we looked at the windows and we determined that if we were gonna do anything with the windows, it was structural, and then we had to make the entire building ADA compliant. And so what happened is our board, we realized that it was about just as much money to renovate than it was to build a new addition and not that old addition now. And so if you have this, and maybe you do have it somewhere, but if you have this broken out, and because what I'm sitting in looks like a pretty good building, right? And so if you have this broken out, you can look at, okay, you know, what are the renovations gonna cost in the high school? And is it feasible to do those renovations, or is it cheaper to, I'm not suggesting, this is the process you go through. To knock it down and to build something different there, right? Which would obviously eliminate some of the maintenance costs that you currently have going on in that section. So as far as next steps, I mean, in my opinion, speaking as a superintendent only, and knowing with Icon, I would break it down. If you're thinking that these numbers maybe are incorrect, is I would bring somebody in exactly like that to get concrete numbers. A second opinion, right? And then decide you have it separated, right? What's it gonna cost?
And we're showing here, this is how we broke it out. You know, for Grand Forks, you know, based on the building and understanding ADA code, you know, square footage issues, you know, if you have adequate space, and then replacement cost. And then therefore it's, you know, this was the project that ultimately was approved, was to, you know, you were spending 75% to make this space up to snuff versus building new. You know, and I think having that comparison of, hey, we're not wanting to knock things down, we're just trying to repair the mechanical system. You can still do this same thing. Let's keep it going. It's just gonna cost us this much more, or let's replace it. It's gonna cost us this much. You don't have to fix any mechanical system. You can always try to get someone to custom fabricate parts or something like that, but it just becomes a return of investment, you know, discussion. You know, I'd say understanding what information you were missing and how to answer questions is probably the next thing I would think about. And, you know, certainly getting, you know, we can give you multiple engineers to reach out to and get them to take a look at things or give you your opinions. I think that that's beneficial.
I'm gonna go down a little bit different path, because I didn't know exactly what this meeting was gonna entail. When I was reading over all this legislation stuff, I just had stuck in my mind, $150,000 limit, what can we get done? Okay, with flipping off on these things that we got here. I started looking up, like, for basically kind of the air handler exchanger for the air conditioner that they kind of bid. I was able to find a used one off eBay that was a couple years old, free delivery for $158,000. And that's when I texted you and asked what the biennium was. So if a guy can get that under, because that would qualify underneath the repair cost, so you wouldn't even need to go to the state for approval, right?
Well,
So a guy can get that
I'd have to
there.
go to Basler to fix that piece.
Sure,
What's that?
that was,
No, 150,000.
That's what I'm saying. Okay, so or best offer. So if we can get it here for 150 or 148, so you get that there, and if we can get that off on one biennium, July 1 comes around, July 2, then you can get a pipe fitter to come in, pipe it in. We can keep it water cooled. You got to put certain valves in and stuff. So I kind of did some research on that, and I didn't get exactly how much it'd be, but you'd be under that $30,000 for sure, where you shouldn't have to put it out for bids. So I mean, that's kind of the road I was going through in my brain. And then I was thinking, well, you need to come up with $150,000. You don't have any money. But if a bus costs $150,000 and we're hauling around 8 kids out into the middle of nowhere, I mean, I don't know if you need a $150,000 bus to do that, but I'm just throwing stuff out there. So I don't know if there's a way a guy can push this out, or when these grants are due to update buses. I was trying to get in contact with Dave, but so that's where my head went on. I wasn't going millions and millions. I was looking at what you can chew off without getting into the red tape. So and I didn't know if that's even what we want to talk about at this meeting right now, but.
we talked about everything.
Yeah, so that's.
$30,000, go through the aggregate.
But that's what I'm saying, if you split it out on each year.
And that's when you get into a scenario that maybe you got to make that decision. You know, if you are knowingly breaking up a project to avoid a limit.
Well, we're not breaking up a project, we're doing a repair. Doesn't
Sure.
work right now, it's a repair.
Sure.
Emergency for
I mean, you guys can do whatever you want to do. And, you know, we're not gonna tell you that.
We're out of here.
Get a bidder number?
The issue might be that, okay, so the pipe fitter, I mean, that probably has to, I don't know if that
My
person
thought
has to
was
be
is-
qualified.
So this whole system was already engineered once. And then after looking at Bobby's really good reporting stuff too, and then from there on, say you could get these air handler units at, I don't know what the numbers, I need to get, say $5,000 a car. And there's 56, actually, I think there might be more than that, but just say the 56. Then you clip off one floor at a time or that. Or well, you got the system drained down and you're doing this, we can put off some isolation valves for the really bad ones and we can fix them as you go type thing. So I was just figuring out how you can make it your own little mini 5-year plan on just the HVAC.
Yeah, I mean, you could absolutely do that. I would say, you know, the system is designed and the second you touch it, whatever it was designed to is now kind of null and void. So.
So you place the valve now it's null and void?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I'd say unfortunately, you couldn't then go to the engineer and say, this other thing failed. They'd say, well, you touched it. You know, because.
Who's they? Who would say that, I guess? I'm just asking. I'm trying to get, so
Yeah.
that's what I was setting my dollar amount. I had a budget for $150,000 or less. What can we do with that? Okay.
So let's say you're halfway through your 5-year plan. You've replaced half of the systems and you valved off the other ones and something fails and it floods. Your insurance will say, who designed that? Who authorized that?
We're doing repairs.
You're doing repairs by who? Was it a licensed contractor? And then the contractor will then say, yeah, I'm licensed. Oh, no, I'm not licensed for $1 million of repair. And then the insurance will then deny your claim and then the school can be.
What would be the difference if you put in a whole new system, the pipe blows?
You have insurance. You have someone that's liable. Hey, this is the whole reason it's here.
Well, that's why I'm asking these
Yeah,
questions, because I don't know who
No.
answers these questions.
So right now, the school has insurance, Icon has insurance, every contractor, everybody, they should have some level of insurance based on what their scope is.
So it'd be no difference than Bobby working on something and something happened too. He's covered. by school
Or
insurance.
if he's authorized to do something.
Really?
So
Okay.
small repairs, I'd say that's probably under the school's insurance, that their employees are authorized to change out a filter or do this or do that. But I would argue that the school's insurance probably doesn't cover like replacing systems. And it's all fine if it works. That is great. I would just say insurance doesn't exist because everything works. You know, and there's a reason the school has to have insurance and we do, because stuff happens.
Okay.
I would just say like $150,000 is less than 0.5% of the $29 million that you have over the course of the next 10 years, right? So, I mean,
I get what you're saying, and you absolutely, there's definitely ways that you can attack things to try to be as cost effective as possible. I think that just because you found a used thing doesn't mean that someone else can't go through that same method. So we do a lot of athletic space as well. We do a lot of hockey. So in Moorhead, they have a used ice plant that they bought from Canada. Works just fine for them. They've had it, it's 5-6 years now down the road. There's no reason, you just gotta give instruction to your team and they will do what you want. If you say, I want to save money, and I understand I will not have a warranty on this, but I want you to go get me something cheaper. I mean, if they don't do it, you fire them, right? I mean, that's just the way it is. It just depends on how you want to go about it, you know?
So John's suggestion about bringing in an engineer, right? So if we just have somebody join us at a movie, at a meeting, what are they gonna be able to tell us if they haven't been in our building and they haven't seen it and they haven't, you know, because we had that architect from Aberdeen, what was his name? You know the guy that I'm talking about?
forget, but you brought him in.
He came in, yeah, and then they were talking about the Bulldogs stuff, and I tried to get them to nail down on an amount that they would give us, and they wouldn't, because it was like, well, when are you gonna do your build? We can't, we don't have the money. Well, I'm gonna keep, you know, I'm not gonna, they weren't willing to throw an amount to me because I would be holding them to that, and we didn't have the money, you know, so they came and they looked at it and they had some suggestions, but we didn't have the money.
He was in Aberdeen. Maybe we could ask him to come back.
That was it Jason Thibodeau?
No, it was,
Travis Sheemiller?
yeah, what was his last name?
Like Sheemiller.
Yeah, that guy, yeah.
Sick with
Mhm.
it. That's who we went and met with that day, John.
Yeah. And, you know, it was, hey, what was the amount that you came to? Well, when are you gonna go, when are you gonna be building? When's your project gonna start? We don't have the money to do it. And in this, and I get that piece, right? Because we hadn't paid them. He was just doing it, you know, wanting a job, right? So, but for this committee, it's come with a recommendation to those two people and their three counterparts, because they're the ones that have to make the decision. If they're the ones, if the board is willing to, you know, cut corners, go the cheapest route, run the risk, that would be on them. But I mean, you saw from the stuff that I sent you that they're liable. I'm liable. Shannon's liable. Anybody that has knowledge of it, if something goes wrong, we're gonna be prosecuted.
I don't, and I'm gonna be the bad guy when I say this, I don't know, prosecuted seems to be an awful harsh word. There's a big difference from going from, let's just jury rigs and stuff with some duct tape and whatever, and, you know, we'll put the onus on Bobby because he's the one that didn't tighten that valve tight and it flooded it. I think a better approach would be that it's no different than any one of our houses, or there's certain things that you could do in your house within your budget. I can't do nearly what Leroy can. It's just how it is. So I think it all goes back to the school has to live within its budget. In the minute, and I shouldn't say the minute, when we look at some of these projects that need to be done, they need to be done. But we have to make sure that it's done the most, and I'm not saying that ICS or that maybe we come back and everyone that was throwing hammers at $12 million, it comes back and it's 15 million, and now we're eating pro. Well, man, why did we do that? You know, I just think, and we have to be studious. The school board has to be studious on spending money that has 20-year implications. And Shannon, you might throw a hammer at me when I say this, but that $400,000 engineering fee up front, we are going to have to pay that regardless. And I think everyone would raise their hand in this room, and probably 85% of the people in the community would, that they know something needs to be done with the school. You'll always have your 10% naysayers on anything. But if we would spend $400,000 on engineering and it saved us $300,000 or $400,000 in project cost, I would take that any day of the week. And even if we didn't save any money in project cost, that's a cost that's going to be incurred no matter what. And goes back to my comment about we can't do the same thing we did the first time around. It's going to be the same result. If we go and I know Mr. Dobat said that we had drawings and we had this. Whether the community didn't trust it, or in case of Leroy's windows, you know, it seemed outlandish that a window is $4,800. I mean, that window is $4,800. Really, it just, so by having it's a gray area, because, you know, do you have to put a 5 or 10% contingency because it's not done for 6 months or whatever? But money invested up front seems like a lot, and I know Shannon has, and I can say these because I'm not the one that's got to try and borrow the money or find cuts, but it's going to be an incurred cost no matter what. And is this a way that you get the community and everyone else to buy into it? Because this is actually what it's going to cost.
So we have that 400,000 that we have to do like the upfront that you want, that you're saying. So if we spend and they tell us exactly what we need and our referendum failed, where do we get that 400,000 to pay for it? Now, if it went through, we could have that money to pay it back because we would have referendum money. But if it fails, we have no way to pay that 400,000 back.
So that's when you go to your local banks, and I had a conversation with a banker, and he doesn't have the authority to, but they would definitely entertain the idea of a low interest loan to the school, and then you take and you pay it back over time. If we are dead set that the school needs repairs, then, I mean, it's an option. I'm not saying that this is what we do. I'm not advocating. I'm just saying we need to do something different than we did before. And is this,
Are you guys sure that whatever you think needs to be done needs to be done?
Exactly. That's where,
Who tells you that?
That's where I'm concerned, if you hire an engineer to do all this work and, are you saying your firm will look at the different situations and give us ideas and
Our goal is to not dictate the project. Our goal is to present you guys with options and you dictate. And I guess that's the only difference is that, I mean, what would you even design?
I guess, do they need to tell, I mean, I know it, Ryan's the only guy, Patty, I mean, they are actually engineers or have worked on HVAC systems, you know. I have no idea. 3/4 of in this room, yeah, we could, you know, Mr. Doe would say it's hot on the third floor, the air conditioner don't work, the toilet only flushes every third time you go to use it. You know, the freezer door in the school's cap or kitchen, it, you know, every other day Bob's got to go remove the seal on. Yeah, there's a wish list of $29 million worth of projects. Is it the school board's job to say, hey, you know what, these are the things that need to be fixed, you know, to ask the community, hey, we got, you know, what do you want to see done at the school? There's people in the community that haven't been in the school since they graduated 20 years ago. I don't know if they're the best resource to say what should be fixed. I don't know would be the.
But those are the people that will decide how to, if they get paid for it.
Well, I'm probably the only one who subs in this school, and I won't sub during part because I don't want to sit and sweat up there. I can't even imagine being a teacher. So, and everything else works in the school well enough to function. The air conditioning system needs to be fixed. So that's why I'm here. I thought we were here to figure out what the main project is that the community will get behind and say, that needs to be fixed. Now, I don't think we need to replace every single pipe and every single tile in every single room. I think we need to get the air conditioner, whatever needs to be fixed on that, so it operates maybe 3, maybe 5 years, I don't know. But we don't need to spend $12 million replacing everything in all those rooms to get the air conditioner working again for, maybe it's only 3 to 5 years, I don't know. But if you amortize what it costs, $2 million, whatever, to get it working for 3 to 5 years, or $12 million to change all that stuff for 20 years, it's a heck of a lot cheaper to just do it the original one. And then once we prove to the public that we can fix a project that needs to be fixed, you go back to them and ask for $2 more million and they do the next bunch of projects and they'll have no problem voting for it. But if you go say, we want to spend 12 million now, and by the way, we want to spend 38 million over the next 20 years, they're just going to keep saying no. And I mean, unless somebody thinks, is there another priority besides getting the air conditioner working that I don't know about?
Can we sit on that?
maybe we should get together and we can do what about throughout the school and.
You guys know what's wrong with it.
Yeah, no, what, I guess in this room, if you don't mind, so we've got number one priority, air conditioning. What else?
Windows.
That's your
High school
before air conditioning?
together.
No, just one priority.
So you,
Okay, so windows,
but the windows in the AC or windows in HVAC go hand in hand, 100%.
The windows have been in for how many years? They'll make it 5 more years, won't they, Brian?
Well, they probably will, but.
Well, let's change the
Okay,
windows in
you
5
put-
years.
John, do you put non-energy efficient windows in your place?
If I was gonna put new ones
Yes or
in,
no?
but I don't go change my windows
I think
when they
it's,
still work.
I think we don't need to decide and or, I think it's just, what
Pick one.
else?
Pick one is my suggestion.
And I think that we've already come to a point where we're pivoting, and that's kind of the whole point of this process is to narrow down. I don't think a $12 million solution sounds like it's right? So what's the in between? What else, from a community standpoint, if we talk about windows and mechanical, air conditioning, what else?
I think like it's easy to pick out like the air conditioning, everything like that from the community sense. You come in a building, it's gonna be hot. You don't see the windows, you don't see the plumbing, you don't see the kitchen piece of it. Like, those are some behind the scenes things, like you said, like you can see the picture up on the screen, saying it's a brand new school, but you can't see those brand new things here. But like you said, I mean, when you hear about it from the community, it's like, we needed an air conditioner. That's what we need.
Well, what
Then you don't, but then you don't think, and that's what it would be for like the kids and the staff and I'll say the people that come in the fall to see like these athletic events. That's one thing, oh, there's no air conditioning in there. That's their focus on it.
But what about the, like, ADA accessibility in the restrooms, or, I mean, is that, I mean, that's a tangible thing. And I think if you talk about air conditioning, that's even a door that's not shutting, that's a tangible thing. 3 times a day, this has to be reclosed. 4 times a year, it's 92 degrees in that room. I mean, it's not an opinion, it's a fact. You know, not replacing the windows will mean you spend $10,000 a year additional on air conditioning the outside. I mean, that's a decision that the group makes. Do it now or don't, you know, there's a return. If you don't do it, if you do it in 5 years, you lose this much. If you do it now, you spend this much more.
So you're basically kind of saying that pick a project, do a referendum, everybody votes.
Yep.
So if everybody goes around the room and picks what we want, you want windows, you want AC, I'll say the kitchen. I don't know, you say, what do you want, Sharon? Pick something.
I'll take
Plumbing. Plumbing, okay, plumbing, there you go. Okay, so now we got 10 projects that we want to come with a referendum every single year. We do one, we get it done. Oh, hey, we need some more.
I don't think.
That's what I'm just saying, that's what it'll look.
My personal opinion is, we go out with a laundry list of projects, and it adds up to more than, I don't know what the magic number is. If I knew the magic number, I would tell you and say, well, let's do it up this, but I don't think you're gonna get a referendum passed. I think you have to solve one problem, prove to the public you can do it, and then they will support you.
Of course, in the next one.
Right.
In the next
Yeah.
one.
And I'm all for almost pay as you go. Let's do $2 or $3 million, $4 million, do a 4-year referendum, get it done, pay for it, and then roll the next one out. I like pay as you go instead of all of a sudden, when I was on the city council, oh yeah, we put new roads in. They're only good for 15 years, but we finance them over 20 years. How dumb is that? So now you're paying for the roads 5 years after they're no good anymore. It doesn't make any sense. Same here. They'll tell us, the engineer will tell us the air conditioning system will be good for 15 years, but we're gonna finance it over 20. I mean, pay as you go is what we really need to do.
But here's the scenario I look at. You're doing that because you can't pay it over 15 years. You just don't have the money to pay. That's why you amortize it out to
Well, I mean,
20.
the city council can do whatever you want. They don't want to raise the taxes enough to get the project.
But that's how I would look at it, is you can't pay that bill.
Well,
because you don't have the money.
I think the thing is, you want more than you can afford.
Well, that may be, yeah.
Always, right? So that's just the case. So then it becomes, okay, we've got 4 priorities in the room. Great job. That's meeting 1 would be done. We'd walk out the room, we've got 4 priorities. Then we come back and say, all right, so what's the tax impacts that you guys would support? So this is bad math, because I'm just using Valley Cities and dividing it by 2, but let's just say $1 million a project. That's $14.58 per $100,000 of home, or 16, 20, don't look at that per acre thing, because that's not valid. So here's where you could say, all right, everybody okay with $14 a year for 100,000? Okay, so then priority 1 makes it. Okay, so then you go, all right, well, if everyone's okay with that, all right, let's add $50,000 worth of repairing 1 restroom. All right, so we went from 14 to 21. Does anyone drop off there?
But you're doing the old trick of selling a payment, not the price.
This is how, I mean, this is how it's paid for.
I understand this is how you sell a project, but most smart people, when they buy something, they don't want to know the monthly payment. They want to know how much it costs, because they can figure out how many months to pay for it. But when you're doing this way, it's like, well, we can sell it this, and I'm not saying you.
Sure,
I'm just saying, we need to go to the public and tell them it's $2 to $4, $6 million, and we can pay for it.
I still think this is important, though, because
Yeah.
my next door neighbor, he thought his son was gonna have to pay $2,000 a year on his home, when it was $19.27.
I agree it's important, but we don't know the numbers. We don't know the numbers.
But regardless, you're gonna pay it out over time anyways, because you don't have the money, so.
And I don't know that there's a mechanism that would allow the district to come up with. I mean, I guess again, it just depends. I mean, sure, if we're limiting to $400,000, and then the district can pay it over 2 years, then maybe they could float that, but I'd say it's not done anywhere else like that. And you guys would be the first district in the decade that I've been doing this to do it
Yes.
this way. It's not that it's not possible.
Well, the city council lowered the payback on the streets to 50.
Yeah, and we can do 15, absolutely. The standard is 20, 15. But I would just say it's not normally 4 years. And the one thing that
Yeah.
we're leaving out is that,
What
so
is
we have
real
4
number?
priorities.
I mean, that's what you would like.
And the piece from the assessment is each one of those priorities costs X. But if you do them together, it's a little bit cheaper. And then you have to balance in the weight on the return on investment of if it's efficiency or if it's accessibility or if it's plumbing. It's just, it's a lot. It's more than that can be decided in one meeting, in one item. And that's why.
We're not deciding anything.
Oh, no, I'm just saying, there's so many variables. And that's why we say go through a process of figuring out what actually is important. And generally have some heated discussion, because that way you actually get somewhere. You know, and I think we can all agree, no one's walking out of this room saying, let's spend 12 million. I mean, that's a decision you guys made. Yeah,
So would this be a way, you know, we've all talked about, what's the magic number that the taxpayers are gonna pay? I have no idea. If somebody knew that number, we wouldn't be here tonight. Is there a way that we could kind of do this? Because for us to pick a project is futile, because we're not, with the exception of the staff and the people that are in this building on a daily basis. I think it's silly for me to say that we should be fixing this or that.
I disagree, because that's how we do it in every district. And we provide you with enough information and walk the school that you're informed. Certainly more than the average person, but keep going.
So is there a way to do something like this? Because I agree with what John is saying, but I also agree probably more with what Drew is saying, is we can't do a referendum every year, every couple of years. Is there a number, a way that we could find what the magic number is that the taxpayers are willing to do a referendum, whether it's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, it's somewhere less than 14.7. I'll just say that. To go here, and okay, now, this isn't taking the results from this. We're not saying, okay, we're gonna go buy this and this. Well, yeah, actually we are. So you get a dollar amount and now it's up to the school board. It's up to which projects do you want to prioritize to stay at this. We could fit in that budget. At this magic.
So the challenge there is that you're authorizing an open checkbook for this amount. Because you're not understanding what you're buying. And that's why that's the tricky thing. If you're saying, I'm gonna approve the school board to spend $4 million. Do you think that the community is gonna support that without understanding exactly what they're gonna do? Because that's why you wanna go to bids in the first place, is you wanna know exactly. So it's a balance. And I'd say all of your questions, if you guys maybe put aside a little bit of some of what happened before and went through a process, maybe not with us, but went through a process, I think you'd come out of the other end saying, we understand that there has to be some give and some take, and you have to make some decisions. You have to trust something a little bit. I don't think it's building or doing a referendum every year, but I also don't think it's breaking apart things that maybe make sense. You know, when you talk about air conditioning and windows, the reasons those get done together so much is because you replace one and the other one will still continue to fail. So it's just like you have to go through this process and discover together. And I would argue that you guys probably, just being here, are more willing to learn than the average person. If you go through it and go through lots of left and rights, and then we get to a point where we all agree, I bet that stands up with the community. And it might end up being 15 or 20 years, but it might make so much sense that you're moving forward. I think, you know, getting a hard bid without the money has never been done that I've seen for anything above maybe 200,000, 300,000, 400,000. If it's below 200,000, 300,000, 400,000, rock and roll. But above that, I just never see it. So I feel like it's just a path that might lead to more frustration and wasted time and wasted money at the end of the day.
What's the longest they'll usually hold a bid for?
I mean, generally it's 30 or 45 days.
So that'd kind of be your time frame if you get.
Sometimes it's longer.
But you have to wait
Yeah, I know.
60 days. Yeah.
Well,
So I think that's kind of that gray area on, if you get that engineer. and then-
It just,
Right.
it depends if you put it out to bid in December and you're saying we're breaking ground, but they're acquiring materials, they're mobilizing crews, they're doing, like, if you're saying, I want your number and I'm not gonna let you know for 60 days,
That's, yeah.
you're just gonna pay more. And ultimately, businesses don't do anything for free. You're gonna pay more. If you want more security, a guarantee is just someone stashing away cash. That's all it is, right? They're just protecting themselves. That's why we don't guarantee a positive outcome. We don't guarantee a price. But at the end of the day, it's your reputation, right? I mean, I'm going back to Tom and Boy, I'm sorry, but it's the truth, right? So at some point, you guys are gonna have to trust each other and trust the school, and then you'll be able to move forward. And whether that's with an engineer or not, I think you guys can make that decision. I would strongly recommend you get a second opinion, and that's not us doing it, that's somebody I can give you 5 people to call.
What if we had, you guys continue with us, working with us, what would be the next step?
So if we were to go through this process, we would generally want to do like tours and go through and understand. So if you guys have already done tours, if you put your eyeballs to all of the issues that are in here, if you can say you've seen it all and you understand it, and what I mean understand it is if your neighbor says, what does line 37 mean? And you can say, well, ADA compliant restrooms, that's because someone in a wheelchair can't get there. There's no handles, the turning radius isn't there. Be able to explain that. Then we say, okay, the next step, I'm not sharing my screen, is to distill the goals, because it doesn't matter what we do if we don't agree that this is what is needed. So what are our goals? Our goals are, and when I say distill the goals, I should say, it's not the project, it's the goals. So the goals are, don't live beyond our means. The goals are, don't needlessly do something, but we want to address ADA, but we want to address failing systems. So the goal in Valley City was they wanted to close at least one building. We're closing 2. That was the first thing, was close a building that on their priority list, because operationally they were in the red. So you guys have to decide what's important. The fact about ADA restrooms is that you're one student away from having to address that. And the North Dakota Century Code does have a way for schools to do a smaller project up to $4 million without a vote, but it still comes out of your general fund. And that's for issues like a roof fails or ADA compliance. A student demanded ADA compliant space in Dakota Prairie. Dakota Prairie said, we don't have the money and we're not raising the taxes. No, it went to the Supreme Court, the school district lost. So these are facts. All I wanted to give you facts. So if you can actually say as a group, we want to address ADA. We want to address the failing mechanical systems. Do you have a secured school? I think you do. All right, that's great. That's normally the number 2 item. Okay, are your classrooms adequate? Sounds like they are, right? Sounds like it's not enough to, so it's, for me, it's pretty simple. Okay, so these are the things, what's the 7 different ways to attack it? If the solution is only to knock it all out in place, then you need to hear more. You need to think about a phased approach. Almost every project we do has phases and has alternate bids. So our bid 1 will be to do 10 of them. Our bid 2 will be to do 15, our bid 3 will be to do 20. We bid it all at once. And then you get the economies of scale, and then you as a district get to make that decision. We have $10, this is how many we can do. Oh, great, bids came in good, we can do more. You need to have all the tools from your group to understand that. So ideally, you guys should be able to tell us, okay, I want to do these 3 things. Okay, then the next thing is, what's the cheapest way to do it? Okay, great. That's a solution we can solve for. Let's call the people. Let's get different opinions. We'll call construction managers. We'll call engineers. We'll get you guys facts. And then you can say, no, do it somewhere different. Do it this, do it that. You guys are the boss. But I would promise you, if you guys, so the next step is to address the district's goals, to assess all the information, to validate. And then that last piece is share. I'm sorry, I got to share my screen. And when I mean share, I mean public. I mean, share it with anyone that'll listen. Hey, this community came together. This is what we came up with. And then go through and understand, here's our due diligence. So here's a great example. If I've got it on here, maybe I don't. Tower City. I don't know if you guys have been there, Great Pies. We where is it? We did 8 different layouts of their classroom edition and showed it to everybody. Hey, we thought about this, we thought about that. It's in a different presentation, but oh, here it is right here. Look in front of my face. So that's the 8 different ways that we could address that. And guess what? One of them was going to a greenfield and just knocking it all down. We know you guys can't do it. They couldn't do it either, but let's answer the question. Let's go through all the due diligence and say, if we can stand in a public meeting and say, here's our priorities, here's how we addressed it. And if we can't answer the questions from the public, then you guys haven't done your job, we haven't done our job.
And at the end of the day, you come out with only facts. It's not necessarily your opinion. It's not a school board opinion. It's not a superintendent opinion. You come out and you say, this is our data. Like your data tells your story. You don't, you can tell your story and they're gonna say, well, that's your opinion. But at the end of the day, you're gonna show data. And if you got a second opinion, now you've got really good data, right? This is the data. This is the reality of our situation. Right? That tells your story for you. You're not telling the story.
Exactly.
Then you run a survey off of that.
Well, you guys have already done a survey, so it might be good for me to look at, or for whoever you work with to look at that and understand that, because there's data there. And then you decide, do you want to go to a vote? Do you want to go to a survey? I mean, that's your decision.
I spoke enough.
I'm loving it. I mean, again, first question. This doesn't happen often where I get any question. So we do this a lot. We do maybe 5, 10 referendums a year. I've been doing it for 10 years now. All the things you're experiencing, we experience everywhere. The Ralph Engelstad Arena is the only time we've not had a budget. Even he required that we get 3 bids though. But we didn't have a budget. That's the only time we've ever had a project without a budget. So what you guys are saying is everywhere. You have to, these are creative solutions. Let's address it. Let's call an engineer and see if it's feasible. Let's call an engineer and say, I want used equipment. We did it once before with an ice plant. Why can't we do it with this? It's a great question. I don't care. But we need a group to ask the questions. If you just say no, that doesn't help anything. Also, if you just say yes, that doesn't.
And it's good to have a representation of the community that you guys already have. You've got ag, you've got business, you've got teachers, you've got administration, you've got board, you've got.
No kids.
You've got people that maybe in this room that don't think you should do anything, right? Well, I guess I think for the most part, everybody thinks something has to be done, but. Like in Beulah, I went out, I had a guy that would call me every day and he thought everything we did at the school was completely dumb and I was the Antichrist. And so, I mean, I honestly went to him face to face and I said, you know what? I want you to be part of this committee that we have right here. I want you to be on that committee. And sure as heck, he said, yes, I'll be on that committee. And after the second meeting, every single one of the no people that he was telling, we have to do something. And he got to be part of that solution. Right. And so it was a whole different story for that individual. Like now I get to help decide. And lo and behold, he came to the same consensus that everybody else did in the room. And we passed a bond referendum. I didn't bring him on until after we failed. Then brought him on, brought 2 on. So it's good to have people in the room that are going to question almost everything you do. And at the end of the day, when you present something to the board, it's going to be one unanimous thing that you're presenting to the board. Like we went through this, we vetted it. This is our data. The data is telling our story. And now the board can make the decision, yes, we're gonna go to a referendum for this amount, or we're gonna do this. You get to decide at the end of the day.
We've never walked away from this committee process. Sometimes it's 2 months, sometimes it's 6, without consensus. You guys will come to it. We just provide the answers. The project will change is what happens. And I would argue that if we go through a process, every one of your opinions will probably be it.
And I mean, speaking only as a district superintendent, when I see $29 million in deferred maintenance and you have $23 million valuation, so your mill's 23,000, you have 460,000 coming in your building fund every year. To me, it's absolutely a referendum of some sort, obviously, right?
And prioritizing and doing what's within your means, because you cannot do it all. Right. And frankly, challenging what's on it. But you guys have to want to do that. And we are totally fine if we're not your cup of tea, but you guys will have to come together at some point, no matter what.
Yeah, and we're like you said, we're just here to answer your questions. We're charged to come here. We just, I mean, as a former superintendent, I mean, my heart is in education, so I want to help out schools, whether you have us part of it or not, that's completely your prerogative. We're here today on our own dime to try to answer the questions that you have to the best that we can answer. And to tell you right now that you're not alone. Yes, there's many districts that are worse off than where you're at right now. You have a facility plan. A large majority of districts haven't even started there. They don't even know where to go. So this is a huge step, and having the committee is another step.
Okay. Been here longer than you were going.
Would anybody be opposed if Mrs. Sell just sent out an email beginning of next week to see if we would like to tag on and maybe have them come in and give them a tour?
And we can walk out of the room.
I mean, if she,
It's up to you guys.
well,
You're the board.
well, no, you guys are, everybody's.
I would be for that. I really liked what I've heard from these two individuals compared to what I was presented last year in the same meeting. I like the way that these guys are going about things and that they're not trying to sell us anything. They're not just giving us one option. They're here just to find any type of option possible for us too.
We can provide you engineers if you even want to talk to an engineer before you bring us back. Also, I mean, you know, you guys got me sweating, to be honest. So this has been good. I appreciate it. I appreciate the fresh perspective. You know,
We're gonna get on eBay tonight.
That's a fact, right? The fact that I see is that you guys have issues, you guys care enough to be here and to ask hard questions. So we welcome the opportunity, but at the same point, don't feel. Yeah.
What is an engineer that you're gonna provide gonna do for us?
Well, so great question. So my recommendation would be to have an engineer or two to read the assessment. And maybe they could say, yep, that all makes sense, or you're missing pieces. The next piece of that would be then to get them to walk the school. Generally, if you didn't have an assessment as recent as this, our first step, no matter what, would have been, before even this meeting, it would have been engineers and Icon walking the school. This is a little different. To be honest, we weren't even 100% sure what we're gonna get tonight. But yeah, I mean, that could be the next step as well, is just, that's generally, once we're hired, the very first thing we do is walk the school with our engineer partners before we even talk to them.
So we're ahead of that.
You are ahead of that, so you have this, so we can look at it and we can provide our opinions. I would say, you know, we will risk X amount of time without some sort of agreement. I don't know if an engineering team will be as fluid as we are and say, yeah, I'll come spend a day without anything. I can't speak, I can certainly ask. But just know that, you know, the risk that we do is that the carrot at the end of the stick or whatever apple is that we have an agreement. So if we do our job and the community says go, we actually get some. That's why we put it all on. We're only willing to do that because we know if we do a good job, there's something. If we do a bad job, you guys aren't out of pen.
And the thing with that is that we obviously feel good about our work. Like, we obviously wouldn't do that if we didn't know that our process didn't work. And I wouldn't be working for Icon if I mean, there's no way that wasn't even on my bingo card to work for an architect firm ever, right?
Yeah.
But I'm a big mental health advocate, and I realized that I could maybe reach more people by helping designing spaces that encourage connection and whatsoever. So I mean, regardless, we come in here and we believe in what we do. And so at the end of the day, if it fails, that's on us. You know, we walk out.
And we have 6 offices, 50 employees. I'm one of 5 owners. We aren't a tiny little mom and pop, but we also, you know, we have 2 employees in Minnesota. Don't hold that against us. Everybody else is here now.
So I'd say that no matter what, we need help in this process somewhere. If you know, it's kind of what that all goes to. How many other people did you, okay, so you started with this other company last year, and then now these guys are here tonight. How many other companies did you reach out to, or that, or this kind of like that, or? Okay,
When we weren't planning on even bringing in a
Well,
company,
sure,
right,
no, but-
until I was talking to Travis and it, you know, like, come to present, so, yeah.
And yeah, and I don't have like a formal pitch deck. This is just like random slides from different presentations, you know. We'd love to work with you guys, like, we want to work with you guys if you want to work with us.
I
So
think
the idea of getting bids and, knowing where we're at, the hard part I have is I kind of feel like you guys gotta get your head around everything and then figure out all our different options, kind of like what you're saying, and how we can maybe do it. Maybe on the cheap or different ways of doing it, and then go after that and try to nail down some numbers. But if we just say, bring somebody in and say, give us a bid, I mean, are we buying the Cadillac and we maybe don't need it, you know? And so then we really don't know what we need until we have more dialogue, I feel like. So that's the goal there. You know, we can still get that before at any.
you can almost call that a second set of eyes too, considering how much money and time's been put into that little piece of paper the way it is too, so if somebody else does come in too and say, yeah, you're out of line or.
I like your guys' approach to it. I think that might maybe eliminate maybe stereotype the word or the mindset that when ICS was here that, well, they're just here to sell this big bill of goods because they know on the back end that they're gonna get X amount commission on a $14 million HVAC. I think there was a lot of maybe heartburn or pushback from the community because that was the mindset, whether that's actually was their MO or just their how. So, you know, like maybe you don't get paid unless we decide to pass the referendum. Or I think that speaks volume of that. You're not here for yourselves per se as much as to help this whole process get done. To Leroy's comment, maybe that's more where I was going instead of spending $500,000 tomorrow is have engineers, because I think that they're not going to give us a detailed plan by one day walkthrough, but you know, they can say, Drew, your idea is just absolutely terrible. We can't even think about it, or hey, that's that's an option we did here and there, and it it worked or it didn't work. I think those are things that you can help us and really get the committee here to kind of, I don't want to say buy into your process, but I think gives us a level of comfort because I know absolutely squat about air conditioning. So for me to even make a comment to do anything is, and Leroy probably agree the same thing. It's futile for us to sit here and make any kind of comments on what to do in an HVAC system other than maybe we can do something cheaper than $12 million. Maybe we can't. I don't know.
And I would say, when we have our partners at the table, if they need to be able to say why you can't do something. So if you ask, here you go, I found it, here's the goods you need. If they can't do it, that's the beauty of it, is they have to tell you why, right? And I legitimately think that there's a different way to attack every solution or every problem. And we just need people to ask questions. We only know what we don't know. We only know what we're told to investigate or look. And we call at the end of all of these meetings, we call it Icon's homework, because that's the goal. Is we talk about our homework from the time before, and then you give us some task to come back and bring you data. So I were to walk out today, my homework would be get an engineer to review this, Icon to review this, see if I can talk an engineer to drive down here with me and walk it, and then talk to you again. Or some fashion of that. Like that's where I feel.
Yeah.
Way past our time. So thank you for staying late and, I'll work with you guys
And I'm sorry, I don't know that I've ever been a part of a meeting that was an hour long, so just prepare.
and let's see, it's next week, right? Yeah, so next week at the same time, 7:30.